I'm Darren Morton.
I'm Simon Matthews. This is Lift,
The lifestyle medicine podcast where we dive into the science of health and well-being.
Darren, you're an exercise physiologist by background. I mean, you're lots of things really, but I know that you're an exercise physiologist. What's the most inspiring story that you have ever heard about exercise?
Well, that would have to be, I remember a gentleman came to me who I didn't think was very active, and he said with great pride, he said, you know what, I've just added it up. I swam 500 meters, I cycled 20 kilometers, and I ran 5 kilometers. And I thought, wow. And so I wanted to affirm. I said, that is incredible. Well done, brother. And he says, yes, it's been a big year. So I don't know if that's the inspirational story you're after, but anyway, he was impressed.
Well, it does point to one of the challenges, doesn't it, of 21st century life, which is that collectively we are generally underactive and under exercised.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to focus on today: the idea of exercise and activity. Darren, what's your favourite exercise or type of exercise?
Type of exercise. I'm a sort of a cardio type of person. So, and my favourite exercise. I'm very active. This is the space I love, but I would say it'd be running. If there was one thing that I could hold on to for as long as I possibly could, it would be the ability to run. And I like the fact that it's time efficient, so I can actually get out and I can go for a quick blast, even 20 minutes, and I come back and I feel human again. So I think for me, yeah, it'd be running. Running is my main go-to.
Tell me what you get out of it.
Oh, I think for me, I was about to say that all my great ideas come whilst I'm running, but I don't know how often I have great ideas. That's maybe talking it up a little bit. But it's certainly for me, I'm a bit of an introvert, and I think I'm naturally attracted to running in sort of natural environments like bush. We've got lots of bush tracks around our area. And there's something about it where I get out and I'm running along and the air's flowing through at a more rapid rate. I just feel like I get brain clarity, and often I don't know, I just feel full of the joy of living whilst I'm running. Yeah. When I'm not injured, and that becomes more and more of a challenge as I get older. I actually have moments now where I go, wow, I just feel really, really good at the moment. And the reason I take notice of that is because it's less and less common. Normally there's some sort of little bit of a niggle somewhere here or there. But yeah, for me, it does. I feel full of the joy of living when I'm running and just breathing and I'm in nature. It's a beautiful thing.
Wonderful. So you found something that works for you. You found something that brings a sense of joy while you're doing it. It connects you to experiences that you love having, whether that's being in nature or whether it's that kind of introvert's downtime, the capacity to just disconnect from other people for a period of time to recharge your batteries. And I suspect also that the ideas generation flows directly from that. When you can disconnect from the intensity of connection with others, that's the time that your brain relaxes and starts putting these ideas front and center for you. So you found something that really works wonderfully for you.
Yeah. What about you? What's your favourite form of activity?
What do I like? I like running. I'm not good at it, and I do try to get. I am actively trying to improve my running at the moment. So I'm focusing on things like cadence, how many steps per minute, and I have a smartwatch that gives me some feedback on that. To be honest, a big part of running for me is not the physical fatigue or limitation, it's the mental gain. And I find that I have to spend a lot of time quieting my mind down so that my mind is not convincing me that I can't do this or I'm not going to make it or I've got to stop or something like that. And I think I suspect that's probably true for all of us, that we hit our mental limitation long before we hit our physical limitations in exercise. But running I do like. I also like, and I appreciate this is not everyone's cup of tea. I like the gym, and I like lifting heavy stuff at the gym.
Really?
Yeah, I love the sense of strength, the immediate sense of strength that I get when I lift heavy stuff at the gym. And also, I love the practical application of it. So just this weekend just gone, my oldest son and I were moving some furniture, several pieces of furniture, some of them quite heavy. We were moving lounges, bookcases, cabinets, dining tables, and so on. Moving them out of a house into a truck, and then from a truck, into another location. And I found that whole exercise relatively easy. And in fact, I said to Oliver sometime while we were doing it, I said, "This is why you go to the gym, right?" Oliver loves going to the gym as well. I said, "This is why you go to the gym, right? Because you can do all this." And while we were doing it, I was appreciating that the act of moving furniture not only involves strength, it involves flexibility, it involves agility, mobility, stability. Think about these kind of big, sort of uneven weights that you need to balance and maneuver around. Requires a lot of stability to be able to do that well. So for me, working out in the gym, training, lifting heavy weights, has a direct application to things that I then want to and need to do in my daily life. So I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. I'm about to start another form of, I don't know whether you call it exercise or activity, and we'll talk about the difference between them in a moment. But I'm about to move to Madrid, Spain, as you know, and the game that's very popular all through Spain and indeed Latin America is padel, which is for our American listeners, it's a bit like pickleball. It's played on a half court with small rackets, and I am so keen to find a padel club near to where I'm going to be living and start playing that. So that'll be another type of exercise that I'll enjoy.
That resonates with me, that whole functionality piece, and I think that this is a really important point to consider, particularly as we get older. And I'm not a gym junkie, so maybe by looking at me you can tell, but I do have some weights out in my back veranda, and I've got a chin-up bar, and so I try and do that, a couple of times a week. And I'm like you, I actually find I feel a lot better. You feel more functional. You feel stronger when you engage in that type of activity. And there's huge benefits with that. In fact, people sometimes say, who should be doing that sort of resistance type activity? And that doesn't involve going to the gym. Like I said, I've just got some hand weights that I have out in my back veranda. But I actually say to them that probably the people that stand to benefit the most from that kind of activity are the exact opposite demographic than what you'd expect. It's not the young males. It's actually the older females, I would say, that actually stand to benefit most from that kind of form of resistance activity.
Yeah. And really, I think what lies at the heart of all of this is that everyone can benefit, and most of the benefit accrues, as with all changes, most of the benefit accrues very quickly when you go from nothing to something.
Yes.
So if you're not doing anything and you start, for example, training at the gym, what's the first thing you're going to experience, Darren? 4 letters, starts with P, ends in AIN.
Yes. And you know what? Actually, it's funny you mention that, because I've done lots of presentations all around the world on exercise and trying to get people to be more active. And I've actually played that game where I say to people, like a word association, I say, when I say the word exercise, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And the most common word, I'm interested, what listeners would think, but the most common word I hear is pain.
Yeah.
Pain.
Yeah.
Which is not a good thing, because we're probably, I think it was Aristotle that told us that we tend to avoid things that cause us pain and move closer to things that give us pleasure. So yeah, I think there's a
Yeah,
challenge there in
yeah.
the way that we view what exercise is.
Absolutely. Although I think we can change mindsets too. So I think it's important to distinguish, and as an EP, I'm sure you would encourage your clients that you used to work with to make this distinction too, the distinction between pain and soreness. I mean, if you get a sudden acute pain as you're doing something, that's a clear sign that you should stop, step back, reflect, evaluate what you're doing, and perhaps do it differently.
Yes.
Or investigate further and understand what's causing that pain. Soreness, on the other hand, which we typically get following having used our muscles, is a wonderful feeling. I mean, I love the feeling of being sore, because for me, it's direct feedback that says, this is good. You've done what your muscles should be. You've used your muscles in the way that you should be using them. They have done some work that's valuable to them. So I really love that feeling of being sore after a gym workout.
That's an interesting thing, and I'm wondering whether that's everyone's experience. Certainly, I mean that what we actually call it DOMS. So the technical term is delayed onset muscle soreness.
Yeah, yeah.
And what people don't realise about that delayed onset, that it can take up to 72 hours before it completely manifests.
Yeah.
And it's I've actually had many experiences where people have done some resistance activities, and then the next day they go, "Wow, I thought I would have been sore, but I'm not," and they're so proud of themselves. And it's like, wait, here we go. And then the next day it's like, so I think, obviously there is that sense of I've done something, and it stimulates proprioceptors. So we actually feel like, oh yeah, I'm a weapon now. Like here I am. I look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like from that one session. But so I think there's value in it. Obviously going too hard with it can be a little bit problematic.
Absolutely.
And where that becomes a problem, I think, is when it causes people to start to go, well, I don't want to do that anymore. There was, and I feel apathetic, and it's not nice to get around and feel like this.
Yeah.
But
this is a really interesting part of the discussion, because it's making clear the importance of mindset in exercise and activity as well. How we think about, how we understand what we're doing, the meaning that we attribute to the various experiences that we have. So it is fairly easy to attribute soreness to overwork. And when I was a personal trainer as well, I used to often hear people say, "Oh, I was really sore after that workout. I'm gonna have an extra day off, or I'm not gonna do that exercise again." When in fact the most adaptive thing to do would be to have a little bit of a break and get back to it, to train your muscles to tolerate that soreness, to get used to that, to build some internal rigor and strength. And over time, of course, that soreness will tend to decline, unless you significantly increase the work that you're doing. So mindset, and we talked about mindset earlier in relation to cardiovascular exercise. Mindset is a really significant part of building fitness and strength through exercise and activity. But let's distinguish. If you were to explain the difference between exercise and activity to someone, how would you do that, Darren?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And in fact, I mean, as I played that word association game, I've played with audiences all around the world. When I use the word exercise, I'm very mindful that for the majority of people, now some people that love exercise and get as you responded, feel a bit sore, and it's like whereas others people, they're not that way inclined at all. In fact, many people, when they hear the word exercise, it just means back away. And so I've actually moved towards, I don't use the term that often, particularly when I'm talking to, unless they're sort of a highly motivated group, to a community group. I don't talk. I wrote a book about exercise in, probably, it's nearly 10 years ago now, and actually didn't use the word exercise in the title very intentionally. So I actually called the book Live More Active, because I like the word active. I think that word, and maybe it's a mindset thing again that you spoke to, but people have, when I talk about doing exercise, people are like, when I talk about being active, that sounds a bit sort of vitality, full of vitality. It's a more
Yeah.
approachable and doable
Yeah.
thing. So, there's this difference between exercise can be viewed as more prescriptive. There's an intent in terms of developing a fitness component, we refer to them, whereas active is something we can do all the time, throughout the course of the day. And I really like the research that indicates that, if you want to run become an Olympian, or if you want to have particular fitness goals, then exercise is a great thing to do. But for most of us, just being active and moving a lot, and and as you indicated, the more, even just little bits, but moving a lot throughout the course of the day is really valuable. We know, for example, when people just go from only taking, say, 2,000 steps a day, which is very sedentary, and going up to 4,000 steps a day, which is not that hard to do, honestly, we see a tremendous reduction in their risk of dying from all causes. And so we definitely know that our bodies are designed to move. And when we adhere to that design brief, things start to go a whole lot better for us. So,
and interestingly, we see much more of a difference at the 2,000 to 4,000 level than we do, say, at the 16,000 to 18,000 level.
That's
If
correct.
you're already doing that number of steps, adding an extra 2,000, I mean, it's certainly not going to hurt you, and I guess there's some benefit there, but you don't get the same benefit, do you?
No, that's exactly correct. And if you look at the, all the data, and this is large scale sort of, research with involving hundreds of thousands of people, what we know is that there's diminished return. So the more active you become in the first instance, when you start to, get on a bit of a roll, we see huge reductions in your risk of dying from all risk factors. And then as you start to become increasingly active, it starts to plateau out. By about 10,000 steps, and this is where the recommendations have emerged from, by about 10,000 steps, the added benefits you get after that, they're there. So there's actually, extra benefits of being more active than that, but they're highly diminished. And you've got, probably 90% or so of the benefits of that can be obtained. So, so I think that's an important thing. And you know what? 10,000 steps is a great goal, but even at 8,000 steps and even at 6,000 steps, that's a whole lot better than doing 2,000 steps.
Yeah. I really like the you made reference earlier to the idea of mindset. What it is that you're trying to achieve here, and I think this is a really important part of exercise as well. That we approach it with an intention to do something. You and I have talked previously about about what we want for ourselves as we get older. When I exercise now, and I exercise by running, by going to the gym, by doing HIIT classes, high intensity interval training, and by doing boxing classes. I love boxing, not smack in the head boxing, but just fitness boxing. I do those things because I want to be strong 30 years from now, and I want to be stable 30 years from now. I want to be able to travel 30 years from now and walk places and see and do the things I want to see and do. So all of my exercise is done with that in mind. And interestingly, we've got a lot of anecdotal evidence from the Blue Zones research that shows the variety of things that people do that make a difference.
LIFT is supported by the LIFT Project, an educational adventure where you learn science-based ways to lift your mood and your life. The LIFT Project is lifting lives around the globe in healthcare settings, workplaces, schools, universities and communities. To find out more, visit theliftproject.global.
So, for example, in Okinawa, there was the story of the woman dancing with the bottle on her head, and she's in her 90s. In Calabria, there's stories of people tending to their olive trees and the labour that's involved in doing that. The Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, famed for high levels of exercise, tennis, um, walking, going to the gym, and so on. In Costa Rica, just the constant physical activity all day, not necessarily of a huge intensity or huge volume, but just steady physical labour all day. And even in Sardinia, the farmers who walk with their sheep to take them to different pastures. All of those things add up to make a difference. They all involve some type of certainly some type of activity. Some of them involve the more rhythmic kind of levels of exercise that you might see in a gym. You know, when you're doing 10 reps or 12 reps of something. Uh, but it all keeps people moving and active. I often think about the difference between activity and exercise as activity is everything you do from the moment your eyes open in the morning till the moment your eyes close at night. Um, and I generally encourage people to be as active as you possibly can for every
I like that.
waking moment that you have.
Mm,
So to
mm,
really think about not being stationary or sedentary for too long at all during the day.
yeah.
Exercise, on the other hand, for me, is done with that specific intention of doing something that's going to build my cardiovascular fitness, or build my strength, or build my stability, or build my flexibility and mobility. Um,
Yeah,
so,
I like that. I think Dan Buettner, who was involved in the Blue Zones research, and he actually talks about his phrasing is move naturally. So incorporate movement throughout the course of the day in all the
yeah.
different things that you do. I've actually met Dan before, and he actually shared a story which I thought was quite fascinating, because obviously the Blue Zones are about those pockets in the world where people live extraordinary periods of time. And he said that when they were doing their research, they thought they'd actually found the longevity superstars, and it was a town in Russia. I don't know if you've heard this story, but they had people there that were 130 years old, and quite
Wow.
a number of them in this community. And when they went there to do the research to find out, because they were meeting these 130-year-old people that really only looked about probably 90ish, and he thought, this is amazing. This is like the blue zone, the deep blue zone. Anyway, it turns out that what had happened is during the war, when the Russian army would move through conscripting, they would walk into the town hall, look up the record books, and then anyone between the ages of 20 to 40 get on board. You've just been recruited. And this town had heard about this, and so they'd gone in and changed their dates, and some of them had added on up to 40 years to their lifespan, and
To
never
avoid, gotcha.
and no one had ever bothered to change it back. So when they actually got to the bottom of it, these 130-year-olds that looked 90 were actually
We're
90
actually
years
90.
old. So
That's
they got
it.
dropped
That's
off the
it.
list.
Even being able to do this stuff at 90 years old. That's impressive, right?
Still impressive. Still,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. So one of the interesting questions is, how do you stay active through the day, particularly if you have a sedentary job? For some people, it's easy. So my two sons both work in the field of engineering. They both have very, very active jobs. They're moving all day. Sometimes they're lifting things, sometimes very heavy things. They're bending, they're picking things up, and so on. So they are active all day. I, on the other hand,
Mm,
am largely a teacher. So I'm, often sitting in front of a screen like this, teaching for long periods
mm,
of time. How do I stay active? Well, one of the things I aim to do is generally stand up while I'm teaching. I also am really conscious of moving as much as I can between teaching. So even though I might have to sit here in front of a camera for 60 or 90 minutes at a time, as soon as that's over, I'll go out maybe to the kitchen, make some coffee. Maybe I'll hang some washing out. Maybe I'll do some other domestic task and stay moving as much as I possibly can. Uh,
mm.
I aim to, anytime I'm studying for an extended period or reading or something like that, I aim to get up and move around pretty frequently. But there's also the question of, at some stage you want to sit down and just relax. Maybe you want to read a book. Maybe there's a show on Netflix you want to watch. How do you maintain levels of activity there? Well, again, there's lots of things that you can do. You can, for example, pause your show, or at the end of a chapter, put your book down and get up and do a domestic task that involves you moving to some extent. Or you can do my favourite activity of all time, and this can be done anywhere, any place, especially when you're seated. And in fact, I've been doing this activity for the whole time that we have been talking so far. So Darren, I'm gonna get
I'm
you guessing a
intrigued.
little. I'm going to get you guessing a little bit what this activity is. Now you're going to know the answer to this question because you're an exercise physiologist. What's the biggest muscle in the human body?
It would have to be a maximus muscle. So, and I'm going with gluteus maximus. And now I'm
You are
intrigued by
exactly
what you've
right.
been doing as you've been chatting. You can
You are exactly
multitask.
right. It's the gluteus maximus. We've got two of them, one per side, and
Yes.
you can't tell, but the whole time that I've been talking to you, I have been rhythmically contracting each gluteus maximus.
Rhythmically.
And
Wow.
here's my challenge. Here's my challenge for you now. I want you to make direct eye contact with me. You start doing it too, and see if you can keep a straight face.
Well, even better than that, let's see if we can do it in time with each other without
Oh
just
yeah,
communicating through the eyes.
okay. We need a metronome for this, but
Do you know what? I really like this. I think that our gluteus maximus is designed for contraction. It's not meant for sitting. And so I actually say that we need to be less we need to do less bottom dwelling. We're not meant to be bottom dwellers.
yeah,
But we know it's interesting. You think to yourself, really, could that make a difference just contracting a single muscle? And we know it actually does. And this is the premise of inactive physiology. The idea that we actually know that when even people who exercise, say 30 minutes a day, which is what most governments recommend, but then who just sit for the rest of the day, they have elevated risk levels of a whole range of different, chronic diseases.
yeah.
And just by standing, just by activating one muscle group like your gluteus maximus, to actually, what it does, it starts to change basically your internal physiology. So, and we see associated with that reductions in, it lowers your cholesterol levels, blood pressure changes. It's a really quite fascinating that relatively small changes to your activation of muscles can have a huge effect throughout your body.
There's a fascinating piece of research going on right now, Darren, into what's called soleus push-ups. So the soleus muscle around the back of your leg, in your back lower leg, in your calf. And this research suggests that the rhythmic contraction of that soleus muscle through what amounts to a push-up, so ball of your foot and toes on the floor, and pushing up pushing your heel up off the floor. This has a really significant impact on metabolic health. We can probably put a link to this paper in the show notes, I think. Wonderful piece of research. I wouldn't recommend that you try and manage your entire metabolic health just by sitting around all day doing soleus push-ups, but it does show that there are benefits to maintaining activity even while seated. So those glute contractions. I also love doing leg extensions while I'm seated as well. Just rhythmically extending my legs out in front of me. Great for your quads. Here's a question for you, Darren. How many quadrilateral muscles are there?
Well, the quad would have to indicate that there are 4. I'm going with 4.
Boom, you've got it. So you can exercise 8 total muscles doing leg extensions, which is wonderful. So let's review then. So that's activity. Activity is everything you do, every movement you make between the time your eyes open in the morning till the time your eyes close at night. Then there's exercise also, and I know that we've had that discussion about for some people the idea of calling it exercise can be a little off-putting. But let's break it down into the individual components. We want to do things that improve our cardiovascular health. We want to do things that improve our strength. We want to do things that improve our stability. And we want to do things that improve flexibility and mobility. So, from the point of view of cardiovascular health, what's the recommendation?
So the recommendation is 30 minutes most days. And I think and they talk about moderate intensity, physical activity. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that. Moderate intensity is not hard. It's the kind of intensity that you would rate as a 3 to 4 out of 10 in effort. It's the kind of thing that you could hold a conversation whilst doing, but you probably couldn't sing and hold high notes for a long time. So you think about it, and I think and I do this with my students who actually go out and I say, find a partner and then walk along with them. For most people, it's going to be a walk, a brisk walk. If you're really fit, it might mean that you need to go, it might be a slow jog for moderate intensity for them. But I think the important message is that it's not high intensity. It's not clutching your chest, like in a lather of sweat. It's just a 3 to 4 out of 10 in effort. Doing an activity that you could hold a conversation whilst doing. And you can break it up, by the way, into that 30 minutes can be broken up into like 3-minute chunks throughout the course of the day, which makes, many of us are time poor. That makes it a lot easier to achieve as well.
Yeah. There's one caveat that we should put there, though, isn't there? And that is that if you're going to do it in 3 minutes, you've got to hit that intensity straight away.
Yeah,
you can't spend 80 seconds reaching the intensity, 20 seconds at the intensity, and then another 80 seconds, cooling down again.
Yeah. I think that moderate intensity is enough for most people. There's definitely evidence that if you're able to do more vigorous intensities, like for example, that's a 5 to 6 out of 10 in effort, that there are the added benefits, and in fact, you can probably do half the amount. So instead of 30 minutes, 15 minutes is probably enough of vigorous activity to get real benefits. Yeah. But for most people, if you're not in that space, then the moderate intensity, 3 to 4 out of 10 in effort, 30 minutes most days, great goal.
Yeah, and you've also touched on an important element there, and that is that as our fitness increases, we need to work just a little bit harder to get that benefit. And that's a good thing.
Yes,
because it means that you're increasing in your level of fitness. Okay, so 30 minutes most days of the week. I think it's, generally speaking, it's 150 minutes total a week, and you can slice and dice that in many different ways. The key is getting the level of intensity that's going to confer a benefit. The benefits of cardiovascular health, of course, are that it strengthens your heart muscle, it improves your lung capacity. It can help burn a few calories. Although, are we going to suggest that this is great for weight loss? I'm probably not. I'm probably going to say, if weight loss is a goal, then focus mostly on what you put in your mouth and what you don't put in your mouth as well. But yes, there can be a small contribution from cardiovascular exercise as well, and those benefits that you mentioned earlier of reducing risk of chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Let's talk about resistance or strength training. So this is training that focuses on targeting your muscles in particular, and there can be a lot of goals here. You can have hypertrophy as a goal, for example, getting bigger muscles. You can develop power. You can develop strength. One of the voices that I really respect in this area is one of our colleagues, Jeff Young, who's over in New York. And Jeff writes very, very clearly about the benefits of strength training and resistance training in particular, and across a range from 1 to 2 repetitions of very, very heavy weights up to 15 repetitions of obviously much, much lighter weights. And he speaks really clearly about the different benefits that we get at different stages. So you get benefits in power in the low range, you get endurance benefits in the high range, and you get strength benefits in that mid range as well. So important to be working across that range of muscle targeted exercises. That increases your metabolism, improves bone density, because you've got, I think, Darren, you'll probably understand this more than I do, but I think the mechanism is that the muscle fibers in turn pull on the tendons pull on the bones, and that's what leads to the strength, to the increase in bone density.
Yes.
This can improve your posture. It can support stability in your joints. It can be useful for injury prevention, and it just generally makes you feel good too.
Yeah. And that's right. And look, and I think the important thing to recognize here is that your muscles are meant to be used. And so it doesn't need to be going to a gym, as we indicated earlier. Even just gardening activities or lifting things can be just that functionality that involves our muscles doing more than what they do if they're just sitting around. There's great benefits for that.
Yeah. Stretching for flexibility, important. And I think for me, stretching is a real challenge. I'm nearly 2 meters tall, so I don't find stretching real easy, but it is something that I focus on to try and develop, and it needs to be done consistently to have an effect. Mobility exercises, of course, very important in fall prevention, particularly as you age. Ways of recovering, training your body, and training neuromuscular adaptation to being in unusual positions and being able to recover from that. One of my favourite exercises, Darren, I don't know whether you do this, one of my favourite exercises for mobility is called a squat curtsy. And if you can imagine this, you take a fairly wide stance. You start with a squat, and then with your right leg behind, you curtsy, and then you squat again, and then left leg behind, you curtsy, and you just keep doing this: squat, curtsy, squat, curtsy. And
it's great for your glutes.
It is. It's great for your glutes and great for your stability as well, because your center of gravity and your balance is constantly changing, and so you're really targeting and recruiting a lot of muscles and a lot of neural work as well to be able to do this. So focusing on all of those things: cardiovascular training, strength training, mobility training, flexibility training, and generally being as active as you possibly can be for every waking moment, including when you're watching Blue Zone's documentaries on Netflix. Is a great way to build an overall thriving, flourishing body and sense of health and well-being.
Undoubtedly, we are made to move.
Lift is presented by Simon Matthews and Darren Morton. It's sponsored by the Lift Project and supported by Avondale University. Music provided by Pixabay. If you have a question or a topic you would like to hear more about, send us an email to podcast@theliftproject.global. The Lift Project. Lift your mood, lift your life.